Alright, thanks everyone for showing up. It's decent, right, compared to the other ones we had, a couple people. Successful people do not seek perfection because they know it doesn't exist, right? And for us being at an honors program right now, I'm sure the perfectionism in this building alone is through the roof. So this philosophy right here is the basis for my study, which obviously looks at correlations between these three traits. I wanted to define the term success in a way that college students can relate to. So what I did was I operationally defined academic achievement as GPA. So to start, what is perfectionism in its basis? So everyone knows perfectionism, you're overly critical of yourself, you are aware of others' negative evaluations of you, and you basically have exceedingly high expectations. When it comes down to it, this trait, just called perfectionism, can't be defined as good or bad, adaptive or maladaptive. There's way too much to it. So what we have to do is split it up. And what literature has found is that you can split it up into three different subtypes. And that is self-oriented, other-oriented, and socially prescribed. Self-oriented perfectionism is being perfect for yourself, that innate intrinsic motivation you have to be perfect. Other-oriented is those around you have to be perfect, as in your friends you only associate with the best of the best. And then finally social, which is society puts pressure on you to be perfect. The kids whose parents have constantly wanted them to be perfect since the day they were born. And then the final trait is neuroticism, which a lot of people know as emotional instability. So the higher you are in neuroticism scores, the more stressful or the more volatile you'll react in stressful situations. Now, when trying to form hypotheses about these correlations, it's important we try to figure out historically which factors are adaptive and which are maladaptive. So throughout other research, what I found is that self-oriented perfectionism will positively correlate with things such as self-control, achievement motivation, higher course grades, but also anxiety. It negatively correlates with things like procrastination, Machiavellianism, which is deceitfulness, and psychopathy. When we move on to socially prescribed, positively correlates with depression, suicidality, anxiety, shame, and guilt, and then negatively correlates with self-esteem, achievement motivation, and self-control. The third type, other, positively correlates with what's known as the dark triad of personality, Machiavellianism, psychopathy, and narcissism. And then finally, neuroticism will positively correlate with life stress, emotional disorders, and substance use disorders. And it finally, it negatively correlates with successful study skills. So what's the purpose of all this? Why does this matter? Right? So defining perfectionism and figuring out what exactly it is, adaptive, maladaptive, and those sorts of traits, if you can figure out, okay, well, perfectionism as a whole, you can't say it's good or bad. So what is good and bad about it? Identifying maladaptive perfectionism traits can be helpful in college and counseling centers to help students really succeed when you find out, okay, why is this kid struggling? What traits does he have that are making him, okay, his GPA is significantly low and he's really, really emotionally unstable. So what traits are there that maybe breed that, and how can we help with that? So what are the hypotheses with each correlation? So the first, we have the three parts of perfectionism and GPA. So based on adaptive and maladaptive traits, I think that self-oriented perfectionism is going to positively correlate with GPA, and the other two, other and socially, will negatively correlate. When it comes to how those three relate to neuroticism, self-oriented, I'm saying, will have a negative correlation with neuroticism, because I'm saying if you're a self-oriented perfectionist, you're going to have lower neuroticism, which we'll find out later is incorrect. And the other two, other-oriented and socially, I said, will positively correlate with neuroticism in that you'll be more emotionally unstable. And then finally, we have neuroticism and GPA. And I'm saying that if you have a higher GPA, I believe most likely you'll be less neurotic because you'll be more happy with where you are in life. So who exactly took place in the study? I had 161 students at Robert Morse, all juniors and seniors. It just so happened to come out 81 male and 80 female. That was just luck. And I split it up between departments to get a proper distribution of all the different personality types that are usually have. So 31 School of Business, 27 Computer Information Systems, 26 Education Social Sciences, 42 Nursing and Health Sciences, and 35 STEM majors. What was the design? Simple correlational research. Survey batteries, I did them all in hand, printed out 161 of them, took them into the different classes, and had the students fill them out. It started with a demographic form and a consent form. Consent forms were confidential, split up, and then you had anonymous surveys that everyone filled out. Specifically, what was used were, first of all, the multidimensional perfectionism scale. And consists of 45 items. So it's split up into 3 types, the 3 we said earlier, and there's 15 questions on each of those. So an example of self would be when I'm working on something, I can't relax until it's perfect, and it was all Likert scale 1 to 7. An example of other is I seldom criticize my friends for accepting second best. And third, for social, my parents rarely expected me to excel in all aspects of my life. And the second portion was only 8 items. Everyone knows the Big 5 personality inventory. We probably all took it in general psych. And it is 8 items consisting of neuroticism questions. So Likert scale 1 to 5 in that I see myself as someone who is depressed, is moody, handles stress well, those types of things. So after giving out all of these surveys and analyzing results through SPSS, what did we find out? Was there anything that was noteworthy? To start with GPA, we found that self-oriented perfectionism was positively correlated. And those that did have higher GPAs also tended to have higher expectations of themselves, which makes sense. Also, there were gender differences, which I didn't take note of in my hypotheses because I just didn't think of it. Females tended to be higher GPA-wise than males, and also neuroticism with GPA in that it goes down. So those who have higher GPAs tend to have lower neuroticism scores. Next, we're going to look at with self-oriented. So we obviously know it's with GPA, but with neuroticism and gender also, self-oriented and gender, females tend to be higher neuroticism scores. Neuroticism was also higher in self-oriented perfectionism, which was counter to what my hypothesis was. And we'll see that neuroticism actually turns out to be positively correlated with all 3 types of perfectionism. So if you're looking at neuroticism as a maladaptive trait and GPA as an adaptive trait, now we go back to perfectionism can't be defined as one or the other because it correlates with both, right? So you'll see that here it specifically says the correlations between neuroticism and itself and social. The reason other isn't up there is because I broke down my study into departments, and this is all 161 students. What I found out with nursing and health sciences students is they had a 50% positive correlation between other-oriented and neuroticism, but no other department did. So that was interesting to see that the 42 students that were in nursing and health sciences, other-oriented and neuroticism was a huge factor, which was totally different than every other one of the participants. So what does this mean? What are the numbers go down to? Self-oriented perfectionism does in fact positively correlate with GPA. As we've said, those who strive to be perfect, to prove it to themselves, do better in academics. But it can be at the risk of your own mental health and emotional stability, because all 3 subtypes of perfectionism ended up positively correlating with neuroticism. So that means neuroticism, as we know, is a trait consisting of emotional instability that later in life has huge correlations with anxiety disorders, depression, MDD, those types of things. So as time goes on, yes, your GPA may be higher, but you're at risk for emotional instability and mental health in general. And finally, there's distinct gender differences. Females tend to have higher GPAs, neuroticism scores, and self-oriented perfectionism scores than males. What was the limitation to this? One, the surveys were done by hand. 161 total surveys. I probably had actually over 180 or 190, but so many had to be thrown away because students skipped questions. Thought about doing an online survey, but my response rate would have been extremely low because I couldn't have got the proper distribution I wanted. Second, the distribution of participants by department. Nursing students were really easy to come by. There were 20, 30 students in each class. CIS, on the other hand, there were like 6 or 7 juniors and seniors in each class, so it was really hard to get that. And then perfectionism and neuroticism traits not everyone's self-aware of, so self-report data, as we know, can be lacking in that. Finally, future directions. What can we do from here? I think there's 3 up there, but I think the most important 2 are the fact that it needs to be tested through different populations other than college students and GPA, because success is such a broad term. So how about high school students in their grades, or businessmen in their sales, right? So if a businessman has high sales, is he also high in self-oriented perfectionism? So I think doing it on that scale would also be important. And then finally, a longitudinal study. So the students in high school who maybe had high self-oriented perfectionism, does this maintain through college, and does it maintain through their career outcomes? Finally, I said finally before, but striving for excellence is what you want to do when it comes down to this topic. Perfectionism, we see, is correlated with neuroticism, anxiety, depression. So if you want to do anything, strive to be excellent, but there's a limit. Because as you go higher and higher, those perfectionistic tendencies are going to be demoralizing. Thank you.